Hey Stoic friends, welcome back. Have you ever stood in a room where the noise was deafening but no one said a word? Where your pulse turned into a war drum, your breath felt like smoke, and your truth was clawing at your throat like a beast trying to break free. And yet, you said nothing, not because you were weak, but because you knew that one word, one slip, and you'd burn the whole damn place down. So you swallowed the fire, clenched your jaw until your teeth almost cracked, and turned your back, not to escape, but to reign. There's a scream that doesn't make sound, a fury that doesn't flip tables or throw punches. It just grows roots inside you, heavy, still, dangerous. That's the silence people fear. The kind that hums like thunder miles away, promising a storm that never arrives, because it doesn't need to. The storm already is you. You think this is just another motivational video. Sit down. You don't need quotes and comfort. You need a mirror and a reason. What I'm about to say isn't crafted for claps. It's carved from the moments when life slapped you, lied to you, betrayed you, and you walked away not because you had nothing to say, but because what you could have said would have shattered the room. And silence? Silence was the only thing strong enough to hold back the earthquake. You didn't speak because you were afraid. You didn't hold back because you lacked fire. You walked away because you are the fire, and you've learned how to carry it without burning everything down. That's power. That's control. That's what scares them. When a man can stare betrayal in the face and not blink. When he can hear lies dance off someone's tongue and not even twitch. When he knows he could break someone with truth, but chooses peace instead. That isn't silence. That's dominance. You want to know what real strength is? It's not lifting weights. It's lifting the weight of your rage and placing it gently on the ground, knowing you could destroy, but choosing not to. You want peace? Then stop barking when clowns come poking you with sticks. Lions don't explain themselves to insects. They don't roar for attention. They roar once, and everything goes still. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You always own the option of having no opinion." But let me tell you what that really means. That means you don't dance every time someone whistles your name in disrespect. That means you don't hand your peace over to fools like pocket change. That means when chaos comes knocking, you open the door in silence. And it walks away confused, terrified, and powerless. So in this video, I'm not handing you self-help. I'm handing you a sword. 5 moments. 5 brutal, soul-ripping, real-life moments when your silence will be the only thing keeping you from tearing someone apart. And you'll learn exactly how to master those moments, not with cowardice, but with command. If you've ever stood there, fists balled, soul cracked, rehearsing all the comebacks you never said. If you've ever been blamed, baited, belittled, and still chose to keep your spine straight and your mouth shut. If you've ever tasted the bitter poison of pride swallowed for the sake of your peace, then you are the man this message is for. Because from now on, you won't flinch when they try to rattle you. You won't spit fire when they drag your name into the dirt. You'll smile like a man who's been to war with his own demons and came back silent. They won't understand it. They'll call it cold, arrogant, passive. Let them, because what they don't know is that you've already burned down everything inside that ever needed validation. So, like this video, if you feel that storm inside you, comment with, "My silence is not weakness, it's power." Subscribe right now, because the man you're becoming doesn't explain, doesn't react, doesn't beg to be heard. He walks into chaos, calm, and the chaos backs down. And if you skip even 1 second of this video, you might miss the one sentence that could have built your spine from steel. Every second is a strike. Every word is a weapon. And by the end, you'll know. The loudest voice in any room is the man who says nothing and owns everything. Now, let's get into it. Number 1. When they publicly insult you to trigger a reaction. Humiliation, dressed in the disguise of a joke, crashes down like a grenade tossed into the middle of your world. Eyes lock onto yours with venom coated in fake smiles. The words slice, sharp, brutal, designed not to reveal truth, but to ignite chaos inside you. Past failures thrown like rotten fruit, your looks dissected as if you're nothing more than a spectacle for their amusement. Every syllable hammered home with one goal: to ignite your fury, to force you into a battlefield where they control the rules. Your blood boils, your muscles tighten like steel cables, heart pounding like a war drum, your mind races, crafting counterattacks so fast it's a thunderstorm inside your skull. The urge to explode, to let loose all that heat, so raw, so primal, screams to be unleashed. The crowd holds its breath, waiting for the eruption, waiting to see you break. And in that charged silence, their plan locks into place like a noose tightening around your neck. But hold! Freeze that second. Turn that moment upside down. Refuse the bait. The moment your lips stay sealed, the fire within is no longer a blaze of destruction. It becomes a silent inferno of control. Your eyes become the storm's calm center, your body still as a statue carved from cold granite. No words, no defense, just the pure, unshakable force of silence that screams louder than any insult. That silence becomes your fortress, unbreakable, untouchable, unseen by fools who mistake noise for power. The more they try to pull you into their chaos, the more your stillness unravels their narrative. The crowd doesn't see a broken man. They see a king refusing to bow. The insult boomerangs back, wrapping around the attacker's throat like a python squeezing the life from their arrogance. Epictetus carved truth into stone when he said, "If evil be spoken of you and it be true, correct yourself. If it be a lie, laugh at it." But sometimes the deepest wisdom is darker, choosing not to feed the fire at all. Not correction, not mockery, absence, the void where their venom dries up and dies. You don't enter their arena. You don't dance to their twisted tune. You vanish from the stage like a shadow dissolving at dawn, leaving them to choke on their own bitterness. Walk away with the fire of 1,000 suns, burning silently beneath your skin. Not as a man crushed, but as a colossus who refuses to waste breath on fools. You don't need the last word, because you are the last word. In the chaos of their noise, your calm becomes a weapon sharper than any sword. Your emotions, ironclad and unmoved, rewrite the rules of engagement. This is power few men will ever understand. The brutal, untamed might of silence when the world expects you to roar. When provoked, you don't break, you build. When attacked, you don't fight, you dominate. You stand as a monolith of control, carved from discipline and dignity, untouchable, unshakable. Because silence isn't weakness. Silence is the roar of a soul too strong to be shaken. Number 2. When someone twists your words to make you the villain. It starts like a slow poison, quiet, subtle, undetected. You speak your truth, not to impress, not to manipulate, but to connect, to be understood. You open your chest, tear the skin, and place your heart right there on the table. And just when you think you've been heard, they snatch that heart, twist it, and smear it in front of an audience you never invited. Suddenly, Your words are no longer yours. They've been butchered, distorted, fed through the crooked lens of someone who needed a villain and chose you. They take your honesty and mutate it into malice. They carve fiction out of your truth and hang it like a warning sign. Look at this monster. Look what they said. Look what they did. And the people, they don't ask questions. They just stare. It's the kind of betrayal that doesn't stab. It suffocates. You feel like you're drowning in a script you never wrote, playing a role you never agreed to. You're trapped in a theater of lies, where every spotlight burns your skin. Every whisper is a noose tightening around your reputation. And worst of all, you know you're innocent. But innocence doesn't matter in a world obsessed with spectacle. They don't want truth. They want blood. Your mind goes to war. You want to scream, to defend, to burn every lie to ash and make them choke on it. You want to grab the world by the throat and force it to see the real story. But that's the trap. That's the performance they're baiting you into. Because the moment you step onto that stage, you validate their version. You give them more fire to dance around, and they win. Seneca didn't whisper those words for nothing. It is a great thing to know the season for speech and the season for silence. And this is the season of silence. Ruthless, calculated silence. Not the silence of surrender, but the silence of someone who sees the strings and refuses to be the puppet. You don't fight shadows with words. You stand so still that the lies fall flat against your stillness and collapse under their own weight. Because when your name gets dragged through dirt, your instinct says, scrub it clean. But the Stoic says, let them choke on the mud. You don't explain truth to ears that crave fiction. You don't prove innocence to minds that already lock the cage. You rise, not with noise, but with nothingness, with a silence so loud it echoes through their lies like thunder in a tomb. Let them speak. Let them build their kingdom of delusion. Every brick is a lie. Every wall is made of rot. It'll all collapse. And when it does, when they stand in the ruins of their manipulation, guess who they'll remember? The one who never flinched. The one who didn't play the game. The one who vanished from the circus and left them holding their broken mirrors alone. You are not their character. You are not their villain. You are not even in their story anymore. You're the ghost they can't touch, the silence they can't spin. And when the smoke clears, you're still standing, unmoved, unbent, unforgettable. Number 3. When a loved one speaks out of hurt, not truth. Not every war comes from a place of hate. Some of the deepest wounds you'll ever feel come from the trembling hands of someone you once held with love. It's a different kind of devastation when the voice that once gave you peace becomes the one that shatters your spine with words soaked in venom. But this venom wasn't born to destroy. It was born from pain, from unhealed chapters, buried memories, and silent screams that were never allowed to surface. And now you've become the surface they bleed on. It might come in the middle of an argument, when their voice shakes but their eyes are on fire. It might come quietly, like a dagger slid under the ribs in a moment when you least expect it. It might come from a parent who never unlearned their own pain, or a partner who's drowning in fear, or a friend who sees your calm as a threat. And when it lands, those words don't just hurt, they haunt. Words meant to cut, but spoken through the filter of their chaos, not your truth. You want to fight back. You want to rip through their illusions, to remind them of your worth, your sacrifices, the weight you've carried for them in silence. You want to grab the moment and twist it until they admit they were wrong. But something deep inside, some ancient part of you, stops your tongue because it knows. This isn't about you. You're just standing in the blast radius of someone else's war. You're not the enemy. You're the mirror. And they're not ready to look. And that's where the discipline comes in. Not to fight, not to win, but to feel everything and still choose silence. The kind of silence that doesn't come from fear, but from understanding. Because responding to someone in the heat of their pain is like trying to speak reason to a wildfire. You can't. You'll only get burned. And then you'll become the villain in a scene they already scripted in their head. A scene where pain speaks louder than facts, louder than history, louder than love. Marcus Aurelius wasn't just being poetic when he said, "Whenever someone does wrong by you, immediately consider what notion of good or evil they had in doing it." That's not a quote. It's a sword made of compassion. It slices through the ego. It reminds you that most people don't attack out of clarity. They attack out of damage. And if you can see that, if you can really feel that, then silence isn't weakness. It's grace in its rawest form. So you say nothing. You let their storm crash against your walls and break itself. You don't defend. You don't justify. You don't scream, because you're not here to pour gasoline on a wound already bleeding. You are here to hold space, to stay human, even when someone else forgets how. You let the silence breathe. You let the chaos pass. You let time pull the curtain back and reveal the truth in a way no argument ever could. And when the smoke clears, if it ever does, you're still there, not broken, not bitter, still solid. Because you didn't let your love get hijacked by a moment of madness. You didn't throw bombs just because they did. You didn't stoop to the level of pain. You rose above it like a mountain refusing to be moved by the storm. Sometimes the greatest act of love is restraint. Sometimes silence isn't passive. It's the most violent act of discipline your soul can perform. And that discipline, that's the difference between a connection that burns out and one that survives the fire. Let them speak. Let them unload. Let them cry and lash and tremble. But you stay, not for them, but for your own soul, because you know the difference between a true attack and a wounded animal trying to bite whatever's closest. You don't match their chaos, you anchor their storm, and that makes you untouchable. Number 4, when you're surrounded by gossip and pettiness. You walk in and the room already reeks, not of sweat or perfume, but of something far more human, a stink of rotting character masked behind laughter, the kind of laughter that doesn't come from joy, but from decay, smiles stretched too wide, voices pitched too sweet, and beneath it all, the buzz of names being diced up like meat in a butcher's back room. That room isn't full of people. It's full of hyenas tearing into reputations like carcasses while pretending they're sipping tea. And here they go again. They speak like surgeons with dull blades, cutting someone who's not even in the room. Little comments, slippery digs, fake sympathy draped over venomous words. "I'm just worried about him," one says, as they dismantle every last thread of his dignity. It's not concern, it's theater. Cheap, ugly, addictive. And when you hear it, you don't just feel sick. You feel the heat crawl up your spine like your soul is begging you to leave. But part of you stays frozen, because you know if you speak up, you become the next target. And if you stay silent, it feels like you're complicit. This is the devil's game, Play along and lose yourself, or walk out and lose the crowd. That's how they trap you, feeding you the illusion that belonging requires blood. That in order to be accepted, you must first become a little less human, a little more petty, a little more empty. But that's the lie. That's the bait. Because real power doesn't need to sink to survive. Real power walks out of the mud wearing white. And when that pull to say something rises, when your fists clench, your tongue burns, your mouth opens, shut it. Breathe. Let your silence be the blade. Because the moment you stay quiet in a storm of slander, you become untouchable. Untouchable and unsettling. Your stillness becomes a mirror too clear, too honest, and suddenly they can't stand it. You don't need to defend anyone. You don't need to speak, because your silence says everything. I don't belong in this graveyard. They'll feel it. The tension, the unease, the way your silence swallows the entire room like a storm about to break. It makes them squirm. Why? Because deep down, they know they've shrunk. They've turned life into a soap opera where nothing is sacred. And when you don't join in, it reminds them what integrity looks like. And that truth, unspoken but alive, is louder than all their noise combined. Epictetus didn't whisper when he said, "Keep silence for the most part." He thundered it across generations, not because silence is safe, but because it's surgical. You don't fight filth with more filth. You starve it. You deny it oxygen. You walk out with your head high and your conscience clean. Because gossip is a parasite. It needs your voice to live. And the second you withhold it, it dies choking in its own bile. This isn't about manners. This is war. A war for your soul. And when you say nothing while the room devours itself, that's not weakness. That's God-level strength. That's you standing on the ashes with your name untouched, your spirit unburned, and your pride intact. So next time they bait you with whispers, drown them with silence. Let the tension suffocate them. Let your stillness echo louder than their circus. And when you walk out, slow, unbothered, bulletproof, know this: you didn't just win, you rose. Number 5. When you're angry and your words are still on fire. You feel it crawling up your spine like a demon you thought you buried. Rage, not the polite kind, the kind that kicks your ribs from the inside, snarls through your teeth, and floods your chest like lava in a glass jar. One smirk, one stupid sentence, one sideways glance. That's all it takes. Now your vision's blurred, your hands are twitching, your jaw's grinding like you're chewing on glass. Your heart isn't beating. It's slamming against your ribs like it's trying to escape your body. You're not thinking anymore. You're possessed. And every word trying to leap out of your throat is a missile, hot, sharp, and merciless. Your ego steps forward like a drunk god, whispering, "Let it fly. Burn the whole thing down. They asked for this." It tells you you're right, justified. It tells you if you stay quiet, you're weak. It tells you silence is surrender. But ego lies. Ego loves destruction and anger. It doesn't want justice. It wants carnage. It wants to see you torch your dignity just to feel 10 seconds of dominance. It wants to turn your mouth into a war zone and your eyes into gun barrels. And by the time you realize the damage, you're standing in a room full of ashes that used to be your peace, your relationship, your identity. You can feel it. You're seconds away from spitting words soaked in gasoline. But deep down, buried under the fire and the fury, something ancient is watching. Stoicism, not a philosophy, a lifeline, a silent scream that says, "Don't, not like this." Marcus Aurelius wasn't preaching from a mountain, he was dragging himself out of his own wars. He knew, he bled too. He said, "How much more harmful are the consequences of anger than the causes of it?" And that line doesn't just apply, it haunts. Because what you say in rage doesn't come back with an apology, it comes back with destruction. Your words, in that state, aren't yours. They're the weaponized version of your wounds. They're blades dipped in memory and venom. You're not speaking from truth, you're speaking from trauma. You're not defending yourself, you're feeding the fire that wants to ruin everything you built. And in that moment, the strongest move, the one nobody expects, the one that feels like death itself, is silence. Pure, hard, thunderous silence. Not cowardice. Control, not suppression. Mastery. Silence, right then, is your rebellion. Your middle finger to the chaos. Your refusal to let the fire speak on your behalf. You don't swallow the anger. You hold it like a beast on a leash. You let it thrash and scream inside you, but you don't open the gate. Because once you let it out, it doesn't just hurt others, it stains you. Your voice, once sacred, becomes a torch. Your reputation, once sharp, becomes smoke. And the worst part? Most people never come back from the damage they cause in that 10-second blackout. So you go quiet. You bite your tongue until it bleeds. You walk away shaking. You stare at the wall like you're trying to hold your soul together with both hands. And in that brutal, lonely moment, you win. You win because you didn't let them pull you into the mud. You win because you didn't become the monster you were fighting. You win because silence isn't a pause. It's a weapon so sharp, it cuts without being seen. You spoke with your restraint. You screamed with your stillness. Later, when the blood cools and your hands stop trembling, then you speak. From power, from truth, from a place where your voice can heal instead of harm. But right now, in the heat of it, say nothing. Let the fire burn in your chest, but don't let it touch your lips, because your mouth is sacred ground, and not every war deserves a speech. Some just deserve your silence and your exit. You're not made weak by walking away. You're made immortal. You didn't just protect someone else. You protected your future, your peace, your name. That's the kind of self-control that bends reality. That's the kind of discipline that turns you into something untouchable. The kind that leaves everyone wondering how you didn't explode, and yet somehow walked away stronger than anyone in the room. So the next time your heart starts pounding like a riot drum, when your mouth is foaming with the words that could shatter glass, don't speak, not yet. Let the silence roar. Let it thunder across the battlefield like a god no one saw coming. Because silence at the height of fury, that's not retreat. That's nuclear restraint. And that, right there, is the birth of real power. This world will test your silence like a battlefield tests a soldier's last breath. You'll be surrounded by noise, chaotic, desperate, ego-screaming noise. Everyone wants to be heard. Everyone wants to clap back. Everyone wants to dominate the air with half-truths, broken pride, and spit-fueled words. But you were not built to bark back. You were built to outlast the storm in silence, and that silence, it isn't emptiness. It's a roar the weak can't hear. It's the echo of a man who doesn't need to lower himself to prove his power. People will misunderstand your quiet. They'll mistake it for fear, for confusion, for defeat. Let them guess. Let their ignorance feed their illusion while your silence sharpens into something they can't touch. You don't need to defend your peace like a barking dog behind a fence. You stand still, calm, unbothered. And that calmness? It's terrifying, it's suffocating, because nothing is more dangerous than a man who's mastered the art of not responding. You see, there's a level of power where words become too small for your strength, where speaking becomes a step down from who you've become. When the soul is still, the tongue becomes sacred. And when the mind is calm, the chaos around you loses all gravity. You don't get pulled into their war. You don't bleed just to prove you're alive. You don't fight battles designed to drain the undisciplined. You just walk through hell with dry feet and a quiet heart, and they feel the fire of your silence more than any scream. Because true dominance isn't about having the last word. It's about needing none. When you can walk away from drama without dragging it in your shadow, that's not avoidance. That's a declaration of war in silence. That's power refined. That's spiritual armor clashing against mediocrity. And when you've mastered that, they can throw stones, but you become the mountain. So let your silence punch through the noise. Let it sting like truth wrapped in mystery. Let it drive the insecure insane because they can't figure out what you're thinking. And that kills them more than any insult ever could. Protect your name by saying nothing in rooms that can't pronounce your worth. Hold your dignity like it's the last sword you own. Because in a world screaming for attention, restraint is revolutionary. This isn't a practice. This isn't a performance. This is the highest form of control. So walk like a man who's seen the battlefield but no longer needs to swing his sword to be feared. Speak when it heals. Speak when it elevates. But when the moment is toxic, say nothing and say it powerfully. If this hit your core, let it echo. Not just through clicks and likes, but through your choices, through your presence, through every room you walk in without saying a word, but still shaking the ground beneath them. Comment your vow. Share this with warriors. And subscribe if you're ready to make silence your new weapon. Because this isn't content. This is spiritual warfare. This is discipline in its purest form. This is you, unshaken, unheard, undefeated.